All right, good evening. I want to welcome all of you to the meeting of the Mayor and Council. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Let's give these folks a couple of minutes to get in here. We've got some special guests here tonight. We're going to do this a little different. So I'm going to recognize in just a moment Reverend Spear, and I'll ask you to come up to the podium over here, and then you will lead us in the invocation, and then followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Drew Fowler. If everybody will please rise. Boys, we'll ask y'all to turn around and face this flag when we do this. Mr. Reverend Spear, sir, if you will lead us in the invocation, please.
Let us bow for a moment of silence for all those that was in the tornado and the destruction that happened in Mayfield, Kentucky, just for a moment before I pray. Heavenly Father, as I come tonight, Lord, to pray for this man council meeting, Lord, I pause because you have made it possible. It could have been us in the middle of a storm, but you allowed it to pass over us. So, Lord, we say thank you tonight. And, Lord, I just pray for all those who on this council and those who attended this meeting, that your will be done and not our will. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, Sergeant Fowler, if you will come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you very much. You all may be seated. I want to say a few words about Reverend Spear and about Drew Fowler, and then we'll move on to why these gentlemen are all standing up here in front of me. So, Reverend Spear led us in the invocation tonight, and Reverend Spear has served Pleasant Hill Methodist Church as their pastor for 21 years. He's a retired educator and administrator from the state of Georgia, retiring from Villerica High School as principal. He coached high school football and basketball for 21 years. Sir, thank you for being here. Would y'all give him a round of applause? Sergeant Drew Fowler, who led us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight, began proudly serving the citizens of Villerica in April 2012 as a night shift patrol officer after serving in the United States Marine Corps. In February 2015, Drew became the K-9 handler for the Villerica Police Department, partnered with K-9 Bono. July of 2019, he was promoted to the rank of corporal, followed by a promotion to the rank of sergeant in October of 2019, where he was assigned to night shift as the supervisor. In July of 2021, Drew became the supervisor of the Special Operations Division, overseeing the traffic unit. Drew grew up in the West Georgia area and has made the city of Villerica his home for the last 7 years, along with his wife and 2 children. He appreciates having the opportunity to make a tangible difference in Villerica. Please give Drew a round of applause. Thank you, sir. So these gentlemen standing in front of me here tonight represent the Villerica High School football team, and they made it to the 3rd round of the quarterfinals this year. Would y'all please give them a round of applause? And I don't know, are there people here from the Touchdown Club? Is the coach here?
I'm here, Coach Barron. Yes, sir.
Coach Barron, sir, would you like to say a few words?
Sure, I'll be glad to.
Oh, well, come on up here. We'll give you a microphone right here. This clerk, well, you can go to the podium.
Thank you so much. Let me say, number one, thank you guys so much for having us here tonight and to recognize these young men. And it truly is about the young men that are before you. And what we got is the seniors. And we're missing some seniors because they had a basketball game tonight. And I'm certainly not going to ask Coach J. Rob to say, hey, we're going to come up here, but they need to get ready for a basketball game. But so I know what being in season is like, and it's not for me to take away from them. But these are the guys. And what we talk about is talking about leaving it better than you found it. And when we come into this, it was a lot of work in the off season that everybody couldn't see, and there were growing pains. It was is they had to get to know our staff, new staff. We had to get to know them. But the biggest thing is we had to learn how to trust each other and love each other. And that's a word that we use all the time with each other. It's not uncommon to see our players now hugging coaches, loving coaches, because they have to know that it's way beyond football. And I wish, if I could pull transcripts and you could see GPAs and, the stigma that we still have in Villerica is that we got a rough, rowdy bunch. And it's so far different from the truth when you walk in the schools and you get to meet these kids and they're yes or no sir and they're polite and they're respectful and they're good young men. And so we owe them so much that we got to dive in, we got to go to work, and what can we do to make it even better? But when I go back to talking about leaving it better than you found it, these seniors, obviously, it was the first group since '98 to win a region, coming off a tough year last year. And not many people had expectations of what they were going to be. And they went to work, and they learned to love each other, care about each other, and fight for each other. And to see what they did, to see their growth from week one to the end of the year is as a coach, I'm super, super proud of those guys. And anybody that's ever coached or been in education, those things, you're truly only as good as your players are. And these guys were super, super special, and they left it better than they found it. So that's what this is about tonight, is recognizing these seniors, saying thank you, that we love you, we care about you. And as a coach, I'm more excited to see what they're going to be 10 years down the road than what they did on a Friday night. So super, super proud of these guys, and thank y'all for letting us come be a part of it.
So, Coach, I appreciate those words, and I'm proud to have these boys here tonight. And am I understanding correctly that you were also the coach of the year this year? Is that right?
Well, that's overrated. Don't buy it.
He never want to take credit.
Well, but I still want you to get a round of applause. So, folks, would y'all please give him a round of applause? If y'all can move in just a little bit, let's have the clerk get a picture. I can try, but I'll be the smallest person down there. I usually try to stay up there.
Ooh.
You thought I'd be taller? Yeah, get the big ones up close to you. Here you go, y'all can all do that. Thank y'all, boys. Thank y'all. Congratulations. Thank you. Ooh, Lord.
Thank you, Willie. Yes, sir. Nice to meet you.
All right. Thank y'all. Yeah. I guess the basketball team would have been even bigger, huh? I don't know what they're feeding these kids.
Thank y'all. Yes, sir. Thank you again.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Yes, great job. I appreciate it. Yes, sir. Yes, thank you.
Look, my youngest boy is 14, and he stands a good bit taller than me, too. So I'm used to this. That's how it goes at the house. So thank y'all for being here.
I'll tell you a story one day about my lessons with Jimmy Johnson.
All right, that's good stuff there. The next thing I want to take up is the Proclamation of Remembrance for the 64th anniversary of the gas explosion here in Villerica, and we typically remind ourselves of this every year, but I may not have a write-up on it. Ladies, do I have one? Okay, let me look for it. Here it is right here. All right, City of Villerica Proclamation. Whereas the natural gas explosion in downtown Villerica on December the 5th, 1957 was a tragic event that took the lives of 12 people, injured 24 others, and leveled several buildings. And whereas many worked for days to rescue and recover, and many gave of their time and talents to support the family and friends of those touched by this tragedy. And whereas we, the people of Villerica, should always remember the lives of those lost, the families of all touched by this tragic event, and the giving spirit of the residents of Villerica and the many who came to help. And whereas a day of remembrance has been set aside for the people of Villerica to remember the victims of the 1957 gas explosion, as well as to reflect on how a community came together in healing support to help rebuild lives and buildings. Now, therefore, I, Gil McDougall, Mayor of Villerica, do hereby proclaim December the 5th, 2021, the 64th anniversary of the downtown Villerica gas explosion as a day of remembrance in memory of the victims and in honor of all who provided aid and support. Proclaim this 14th day of December, 2021. Now, this is a great honor here for me, and this came up very last minute. The next person I'm going to recognize is a distinguished former mayor for the city of Villerica, Monroe Spake. We're going to recognize Monroe tonight for 48 years of service for the city of Villerica. Monroe has lived in the city of Villerica his entire life and has participated in the city's government for the last 48 years. He has most recently held positions on the Villerica Housing Authority and Villerica Cemetery Commission. Prior to his current positions, Monroe served 8 years on the City Council, represented District 2 on the Carroll County Commission, served as Vice Chairman of the Carroll County Board of Commissioners, and served as Villerica's mayor from 1992 through 2004. Would you please come forward, sir, and would y'all give him a round of applause? I'm going to come down there. I would like to present you with this plaque in grateful appreciation to Monroe Spake for 48 years of dedicated service to the city of Villerica. Can you get a picture here? Maybe let's shake hands. Oh, let's slide over for the seal. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Monroe, would you like to say anything? I mean, should never give up an opportunity, right? I have a podium right there or a microphone with Alyssa.
It was a labor of love. I've been here my whole life and plan to spend the rest of it here. And like the coach said, I hope that I left it better than I found it and enjoyed every minute of it. Thank you.
Well, we think you did, sir. Please give him another round of applause.
He was my mayor.
So the next person we're going to recognize is for 18 years of service, and he could not be with us tonight, but I want to recognize Jerry Dole for 18 years of service on the Downtown Development Authority. Jerry is the owner of E.T. Dole & Sons store. The store is a fifth-generation business that moved from the New Georgia area to downtown Villerica in the 1950s. Jerry's been on the DDA board for 18 years and active in the community for over 40 years. He was involved in getting the Gold Rush Festival and Parade started back in 1978 and worked tirelessly in putting the parade together until the Main Street office took over the event. He was named the Grand Marshal of the Gold Rush Parade in 2015, recognizing him for all the years of service with the festival and parade. Jerry is a member of the Carroll County Planning and Zoning Commission representing District 2. He is also a member of the Villerica Lions Club. We have a plaque to present to Jerry, but he's not here tonight, but I think his wife may be able to get it to him. So would y'all please give Jerry a round of applause. You can just get it from me later. Okay. And last, I don't think this person is here. Is Alyssa Hyatt here? We want to recognize Alyssa for 5 years of service with the Villerica Police Department. She's not here, but we have a certificate for her, and we'll get it to her. If y'all just give her a round of applause. Even though she's not here. I think she had to work, actually. I think that may have been what I was told. All right, that gets us through the ceremonial presentations. Let me move now to the adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? If none, is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
I have a motion to adopt the agenda as written. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. All in favor? That's unanimous. We will adopt the agenda as written. We have now reached the moment for public comments. There was a sign-up sheet in the lobby. Let me go ahead and say up front that there are a number of public hearing items on this agenda. If you are here for a public hearing, you'll have an opportunity to speak when that item comes up. You don't have to speak both in this session and in that one, but you can. It's up to you. So if I call your name and you mean to speak in the public hearing part, just let me know and I'll move on to the next person. If you want to speak, then you'll come on up. Please keep your comments on a professional level. We will not accept comments that are considered by the chair to be of a personal attack on any individual or group of individuals. If you deviate from this protocol, you'll receive a warning. If you deviate a second time, you'll be leaving. Only one person speaking at a time, and please, no comments from the audience. Also, when you make comments, address them to the mayor and council, not to the audience. All right, first up, Joanne Harrell. Ma'am, would you like to speak?
She said she'll wait.
Public hearing.
She said she'll wait.
Mike Redding. Public hearing. Nancy Mims, Dr. Mims. Come on up here, ma'am. If you will give us your name and address for the record, we will give you 3 minutes, and we have a new clock.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here to actually thank somebody that I didn't know when I first came who did it, who was responsible for it, but I understand that Bobby Elliott is responsible for taking down the sign in front of the pilot truck stop that was so dangerous and we couldn't see around. And so I want to thank all of you, and particularly Bobby Elliott, for taking that sign down. Thank you.
Okay, great. Kudos to Bobby Elliott. All right, Mr. Matthews, you speaking now or later? All right. Joe Ingram, later. Kevin Cersei. All right. Give us your name and address for the record, please.
Sure, Kevin Skasny, 9730 Lakemore Cove.
All right, you give you 3 minutes. Go ahead.
All right, I was more of an inquiry. Last October, the residential roads were ground up for repaving out in our subdivision, and I was just curious. It's been a year. I previously thought, from what I heard, that spring of this year would be when the actual top coat would be put on. So I'm just curious. It's my inquiry of anybody knowing what the status of that whole project is.
Okay. Are you finished?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you one question
Sure.
because I don't recognize the road. What is the subdivision?
It's West Lakes. It's on off Liberty Road, just on the south side of I-20. It's
Okay.
Lakemore.
All right. Well, hang out for a minute and I'll see if somebody has
Okay.
that answer, okay? Thank you. All right. Dr. Michael McPherson. Mr. McPherson, I didn't know you were a doctor. Would you please come up and give us your name and address for the record, and we will give you 3 minutes.
Yes, I thought maybe, you're probably a little nervous right now. You're not. Yes, I thought maybe once for public record, I could use my,
I'm not nervous at all.
yes, for my PhD.
Okay.
Yes, just once.
I didn't know.
Yes.
All right.
yes,
Well, go
yes,
ahead.
yes,
Go ahead and
yes.
start the timer now.
Yes,
I
I
can do this
just
back and
wanted
forth for free.
to make a thank you, first of all, to Captain Michael Young. And I want to thank Captain Michael Young for his service to our country. Michael is a remarkable man, and I've really enjoyed getting to know him over these years. And I'd also like to thank Councilman Michael Young for all of his hard work, because he's always prepared. He always is right on top of everything and does all the due diligence. And he's a man of character. He's a man of respect and dignity. And I certainly have appreciated him in that position. And I know it's difficult for all the council members, especially when you go through elections where only 12% of the people turn out to vote. And Michael, thank you. And thank you for being the man that you are. Thank you for serving our country. And thank you very much for supporting our community and serving it.
I appreciate that. Would y'all please give Michael a round of applause? So we owe it to Michael McPherson for opening that up. So I'm going to say a few words in a minute, but right now let me finish public comments. So I've reached the end of my list. So if you did not put your name on the list and you would like to speak, I will recognize you now for 3 minutes. Is there anybody in here who would like to speak? Okay. Seeing none, I'll close the public comments portion of the meeting, and we will move into council updates. And I'm going to take this moment. I have not had an opportunity before to ever lose a council person, whether through an election or through any other means. And I just want to say, sir, it has been an honor and a privilege working with you. As Mr. McPherson said, you are, hands down, you are well prepared at every meeting. You know these issues inside and out. You ask the pertinent questions. You do the work. You're prepared. I see you at almost every city event, as I did before you were an elected official, as I will probably see even after. But I just want to express to you my sincere, grateful heart to you for the work that you did here on this council and the work you put into this. It's a lot of work, and I talk about lots of times how it's a thankless job, and you correct me and say that you get a lot of appreciation out of it and you love it. I probably complain too much. But at the end of the day, I think that you have been an outstanding member of this council, and we're going to miss you very much.
Yes.
So please give Michael a round of applause. Would anybody, any other council members like to be recognized? All right. Hearing no other council updates, I will move on to the consent agenda.
Oh, I apologize. Is that
Oh.
updates?
Yes, ma'am.
When you said, did we have any more comments, I thought you were referring to that, not council updates. So,
Okay.
All right. Yeah, just a couple things. In regards to the tornado that tore through hundreds of miles across 5 states, I think it involved, Mayfield, Kentucky was hit the hardest. Not just remembering them, as many of us really don't need Christmas gifts. There are other things we can give to. I just want to mention that Southwire has activated their Project Gift. When I heard the news this morning on what they were saying about it, they had not given a specific list of what to bring. WLBB, Gradic Communications, will probably be covering that and broadcasting that information. I expect it'll hopefully show up in the newspaper and that sort of thing also. So that's one way to give. Also, from what I understand, the Southern Baptist group is one of the first groups that usually get there on the ground too, along with Samaritan's Purse. So there's a number of organizations to give to that help. I just want to mention also, I want to bring note to this, and you may have heard it before, we've expressed some concern about what's happening in the housing market, specifically with middle-class families being outpriced. I read a report just recently that in the third quarter of sales of this year, 1 out of 5 houses was bought by an investment entity. And that's something that we had not seen, at least historically, I'm not aware of. I can't speak for what happened, 50 years ago or more. But BlackRock is the largest investment group in the world. They are also very well connected with the federal government here, and they are a big player in this. And so if you hear us expressing concern at times, sometimes even rentals, because these groups are coming in and buying houses, and basically they're turning them into rentals for investment. In some places in the country, they have bought entire subdivisions and turn them all into rentals. So I just thought that's something to take note of, be aware of. It is affecting affordable. It's one of the things that are affecting families being able to afford housing. It's one factor, but I think it's significant enough to take note of.
Okay. Any other council members have an update? All right. Hearing none, I'll close the council updates portion of the meeting. I'll move into the consent agenda. Earlier today at 3 o'clock, the mayor and council met in a work session that was a public work session, and it was live streamed. And it's available for you now to go back and watch to cover each of these individual items in more detail. But all of these items were placed on the consent agenda, which meant they had no objections. And I'm going to read them off. And if anybody hears anything different or has an objection at that time, I'll hear that. Consent agenda, item number 1, presentation of Livable Centers Initiative and resolution of support for a LCI implementation grant for planning and engineering phase of Northside Downtown Streetscape Project. Consent item number 2, Police Department and Courthouse Generator Purchase. Consent item number 3, 2021 Downtown Development Authority Board Appointment, Sandy Minor. Consent number 4, 2021 Main Street Advisory Board Reappointment, Bradford Hegler. Consent number 5, 2022 Professional Services Agreement with RCS Productions, Inc. Consent number 6, Biometric Screenings. Consent number 7, West Plant Parks and Drum Screen Refurbishment. Consent number 8, Bivens Wastewater Lift Station Control Panel. Consent number 9, approval of updated utility rates to be effective January 1, 2022. Consent number 10, professional services with Falcon Design Consultants for conceptual design of road segment. Consent number 11, to approve a proposal from Keck and Wood for additional services for the north bypass related to the archaeological review. Consent number 12, professional services agreement with Mark Till of TE Squared LLC. Consent number 13, approval of work order 17003.16 with Brennan Jones to design sewer improvements near Nally Road. Does anybody have any objections to those? All
I
right,
do.
Mr. Barber.
Item number 1 should have been 2 items. So the resolution should be on consent, but the presentation should have been at the end of the consent agenda.
I've
After they vote, that we've got a presentation.
got it. I wrote it in here.
Okay.
So that consent item number 1, let me just reread that as a resolution. It's presentation of Livable Centers Initiative and resolution of support for a LCI implementation grant for planning and engineering phase of Northside Downtown Streetscape Project. Okay, that will be the consent agenda, and I'm going to bring that presentation right before C1. Chris, is he here? Oh, there he is. Okay, just so you know. All right, let's go to tab B, governing body.
You don't want to approve that?
Move to approve the consent agenda as read.
I'll second it.
You get one of those, Danny. Y'all slow down now. I still get to do this. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
You did.
That's it.
Who was it?
It was Michael.
All right. Mr. Young made a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Carter. All right. All in favor? All right. That's unanimous. Okay. That's our consent agenda. You skip a month and look what happens. All right. Governing body. Approval of the minutes. Council, you've had an opportunity to review the meeting minutes of November 9, 2021, and the special called meeting minutes of November 30, 2021. Is there an amendment or a motion to approve?
Mayor, question.
Mr. Momtahan.
Looking at these minutes again, I'm reminded, because I see the notations on the November 9th meeting, that there were a couple of items from that meeting that were tabled to this meeting that were not on this meeting's agenda. And I didn't know how we need to treat those now. I did not pick up on, well, the first one was a revision of the VRDA, or not the VRDA, the Villerica Development Regulations on stream buffers. And the other was the resolution for support for changes to the state highway system, which
We pulled those off the agenda.
Okay.
So we did pull those off the agenda. All right. Is there a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion? All in favor? All right, that's unanimous. Those will be approved. We'll bring those items back, maybe in January, I'm not sure yet. One of those we've drug around for about a year. Okay, B2, mayoral appointment of Housing Authority Board appointment of Tom Flowers. I'll appoint Tom Flowers to serve the remaining term of Monroe Spake, who we honored earlier today, who resigned from that board. Let's move on to C, Community Development.
Motion.
You don't need a motion for that. All right. So I'm going to recognize Chris Montesinos to come forward and do this presentation for us on the LCI. Chris, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, City Council. Our
our LCI consultant, Donald Zilfra, is here to walk you through a presentation that recaps and closes out our Villerica Livable Centers Initiative study. So with that, I'll pass it on to him.
Mayor, Council, really excited to be here, again, to speak to you tonight about the LCI effort. I know I've seen many of you throughout this process at our public hearings, public meetings, and some other touch points. So much of this material I believe you've seen in one form or another, and there is a detailed sort of report that accompanies this that y'all should have access to as well, should you want to continue digging in deeper. But I'll go ahead and jump right into this now. So as many of you have seen and known, we've been at this for the entirety of this year. For 2021, it's been the year of the LCI study, really looking at the area you see here outlined in purple, composing the Downtown Historic District, Fullerville Mill District, as well as the area around the Tanner Medical Center. We've gone through 5 phases of work, each sort of focused on, again, getting a foundation for, what's here, who's here, what the prevailing dynamics are, and then using all of that as a sort of base to really cast a vision for what the next 10 years of the sort of heart and soul of Villerica really look like. And as I mentioned, a lot of that dealt with analysis, with studies, with trend forecasting and reporting, but a significant portion of that as well really dealt, again, with getting in front of y'all, the Villerica community, to really shape that vision and help us ground truth the things that we were seeing in our analysis, as well as break beyond, and again, really ensure that what we were putting forth captures the spirit, the ambition, and I think really the sort of desire of the community. So in various forms here in this room, at several points throughout the process, sort of on screens and in small groups, we've been out in the community, talking, listening, and again, ensuring that the things that we're setting forth, are in fact aligned with, what it is y'all want your community to be. And along the way, we can sort of zoom into some of these things, if y'all would like, or double click in. Some of these slides are a bit content dense, so happy to scroll back. But I think it should come as no surprise as we went through those conversations. People are proud of Villerica. People want more reasons to live in Villerica, to grow their businesses, grow their families in Villerica, and want more opportunities to really see the sort of vibrancy, the spirit, the beauty of the community and the people within it expressed out in the community, in the public realm, in the streets and in the parks. So big parts of our early conversations were teasing out, what that vision is, what those beloved qualities and strengths were that we should build on and ensure, again, find their way out into the built environment here in the core. There was also a lot of conversation given, and y'all know this intimately well, about trying to better connect people, trying to better link people to one another, as well as to opportunities, again, to own the home, to grow the family, to live in place, as we've seen, and make Villerica the sort of forever home, as well as get around safely downtown, provide more opportunities to linger here, to, cross the tracks, and to support the businesses that exist here today and those that will come tomorrow. So a lot of those early visioning conversations had to do with many of those topics. And as we got further into the recommendations, the aspirations, and the goal setting, a lot of what we heard continued to confirm, to affirm those wants, those needs, I think, and those desires about expanding the walkable downtown district, really, again, making it pleasant, safe, comfortable to be a person, kind of here in the heart of Villerica. Really making sure that the public realm is beautiful and safe, and that we're providing more opportunities to bring people together here in the heart of the community through the addition of green and plaza space to allow people to do so in new and exciting ways. As we sort of looked at Fullerville again, a lot of those same sort of ambitions, came through the desire to be able to walk and bike to downtown, which is, just a stone's throw away, but at the moment largely inaccessible unless you hop in your car and drive. Also the desire to get out in a lot of that nature that exists in Fullerville today and experience it in new and different ways, and provide new and different ways for people to, recreate here in Villerica. And in a lot of ways, too, provide more opportunities to express that heritage, the textile sort of heritage and the spirit of that community in ways that y'all are beginning to, but certainly, have room to sort of grow and continue to build on the strengths. So really looking at the sort of larger vision for downtown, it's sort of expressed in this big map you see here on the right, sort of what we were calling the framework, really for a more connected, walkable, livable, vibrant, and importantly too, equitable Villerica. So this is broken into sort of two components. The sort of streets that you see on those maps are places to really focus and prioritize investment, again, in trails, in sidewalks, in lighting, in benches, in planting and in signage, all of the things that will make traveling throughout Villerica on foot, on bike, again, and I'll say these words a lot, but comfortable, friendly, safe, and welcoming, again, make sure they match the character and the quality of the community that people find themselves entering into. So here in these green are things we're calling, community connectors. So these are big streets that go, a long way and link many communities together and are really in so many cases the front door to Villerica. So we should ensure that sidewalks, trails, gateway features, all find their way, to those, I think, really important assets. And then as we zoom in, and we'll look at this further in the presentation, trying to find ways again to bring that sort of walkable, sort of hangoutable downtown Villerica into clearer focus through ensuring that we have sidewalks, we have spaces for businesses to spill out, to feature their wares. We have places for people to gather, and then truly, I think, in the the heart of downtown Villerica, finding ways to really foreground the pedestrian, to foreground people and foreground the community, rather than the trucks, the automobiles, and the train that largely define one's experience here today. Sort of part and parcel to what where we're connecting are the sort of character then and quality of some of these activity centers within the study area that we are looking at, be it the Tanner Medical District and all that's happening there to bring jobs, to bring innovation, to bring opportunity to the community, in a really sort of rapidly growing sector, but then also again the Fullerville Mill District and downtown Villerica, which each have their own unique sort of place in this Villerica community, and that's something that for the remainder of this presentation I'll dig into a little bit more deeply. So we sort of took that 10,000 foot view, and then we had a tremendous amount of fun sort of zooming in then to Fullerville focus area and a downtown Villerica focus area. So as part of this, Fullerville really did emerge as the opportunity to be the sort of hub for arts and culture here in the community. It historically was a place of production, a place of sort of economic opportunity and of community as the mills were here, and that heritage and that opportunity to transition those former sort of productive uses to a sort of new type of sort of entrepreneurial and culturally centered space, I think exists here. So a lot of what our proposals for Fullerville sort of look at is accomplishing these goals you sort of see here on the right, really providing more ways for people to get outside, to be connected with one another on foot and on bike, to, again, I think provide, a space to grow businesses, to build, a livelihood here, as well as provide new sort of opportunities to live in Fullerville. So we're really trying to bring more people into the community, bring more people into the fold. So if you're looking at this map, you have Fullerville Park which is sort of here anchoring the center. You have Rockmart Road sort of running here almost through the middle of the screen, and then Old Town Road sort of flanking the left edge. So as we started to look at how to structure the community, how to structure Fullerville, there was a lot of desire again for access to nature, for new sorts of passive recreation opportunities here in Villerica. And as we looked at the opportunity for the Gold Nugget Trail to thread its way through Fullerville here, as it's slated to do today as part of the Model Mile, and a lot of really steep, difficult to develop land, the idea emerged to create the Gold Nugget Greenway here. So really a green thread sort of built off of the sort of drainage area and the steep topography that exists out there today, that would sort of flank and I think really provide more opportunities for people not just to sort of travel along the Gold Nugget Trail, but to consider it a park, a public space in and of itself, and linger in this particular portion of it. So we would be growing that sort of green footprint and setting aside that sort of natural asset into the future, even as we look at sort of the North Loop bypass coming online and changing some of the dynamics there. So the sort of Gold Nugget Trail and the Gold Nugget Greenway really anchor that and connect the bypass to the mill complex and sort of the heart of Fullerville there at the intersection of Rockmart and Old Town. Also then looking forward, ensuring that the streets that are there, particularly Rockmart, have all of the features needed to walk, to bike safely, comfortably, and also then have the opportunity to become a place of cultural expression. So sort of moving beyond some of the framework for this, a part of what we were considering here as well was responding to people's desire to do more in Fullerville, to stay, or be able to sort of walk and grab the cup of coffee in Fullerville should they choose to. So carving out sort of the intersection of Old Town, Rockmart, the opportunity for some very, sort of intimate neighborhood scaled retail and sort of light mixed use development to occur, the opportunity to sort of then link that up to the Fullerville, the Villerica cotton mills, as well as the Villerica hosiery mills, and reconceive of those as the Fullerville Cultural Arts Center, which would feature, sort of abundant live work space, gallery space, community space, classes and opportunities then to sort of make and build and lean on, I think, some of the sort of artisanal uses that are already occurring in some of the industrial parts of Fullerville, but, be it the sort of woodworking, the metalworking, what have you, but with sort of a creative spin and one centered back again on the sort of heritage of Fullerville in this place. Anchoring then that Greenway, looking at opportunities for more compact residential development to sort of grow that community and anchor that public space amenity, and then the sort of commercial development that would likely, will follow the sort of bypass, sort of route, but ensuring all throughout it, though, that we have a sort of walkable, sort of human scale network of streets and public ways to get you through and around this new sort of district. So zooming in just gives you a little, clearer picture of some of what is envisioned for that stretch from Old Town, Rockmart up to the mills, where we're looking at sort of expanding that West Georgia Heritage Trail, this sort of reconfiguration of the mills and the crafting of sort of public spaces along it at the sort of terminus of that Gold Nugget Greenway, and at the terminus of this sort of cultural walk that gets you up to them. So then, sort of taken all together, big here is that vision for Fullerville. And we can circle back on some of the more detailed recommendations that I've scrolled past there, should you all want to sort of dive in. The next beyond that was sort of jumping into the ideas for downtown, which I know many of y'all have seen in the papers. I've heard about sort of during your work sections and elsewhere. But again, it's ensuring that the moves that we're making really do allow downtown to continue to be the sort of civic, the communal, the commercial heart of the community, the real driver and the sort of face of Villerica. So through this, sort of first, again, looking at the network of streets, of public ways, there are some pretty big ideas cast forth to help improve connectivity and bring the north and the south sides of downtown together in new ways, and to find opportunities to eliminate redundancy and give more space back again to the community, to the people who want to be in downtown Villerica, and to give more sort of civic space over and frontage over to help spur business creation and development sort of here in downtown. So we'll zoom into this, but sort of what you see here in this diagram on the left are the ideas for some new sort of green spaces, things we're calling Butterball Junction on the south side here, a new reconfiguration of Main and Temple Street to give a side space for something called Gold Miner Green, as well as the north side downtown streetscape improvements. Excuse me, and this idea of creating sort of a tight walkable loop along Bankhead Highway up to a realigned Cheeves and West Wilson, and then down Main and Temple, sort of all the way to Stone. So you have options to get back and forth, and you have an incredibly sort of amenity-rich environment to help facilitate you getting around. Then sort of plugging into that network of public ways and public spaces, as you see here, are the ideas for how we can start to craft a few gateways, a new sort of true front doors and faces as people arrive in Villerica through the form of what we're calling these gateway developments, excuse me, sort of near the northern stretch along Bankhead Highway, as the new shoreline connector sort of comes and plugs in, as well as here sort of south along Bankhead Highway by Butterballs. So we would have these sort of mixed-use developments, residential, commercial, some office space, to provide that opportunity to sort of live, work, play here in Villerica, and then again to sort of signal arrival to the community here. There would also be select infill development sort of throughout downtown, again, to ensure that we have those consistent street frontages and we have the space needed for new businesses, new entrepreneurs to find a home here in Villerica, as well as for those that are already here that may need to grow with the community. So that is sort of what you see here in this red. And then ideas for, specifically, I'll mention this gateway redevelopment here along the future shoreline connector, but to relocate City Hall downtown, to include some additional residential sort of flanking it, as well as the potential and sort of the long term for a small parking deck to help provide, again, that opportunity for some of these new folks visiting, being in downtown, to comfortably find parking to do so, sort of centered around a redevelopment of the Avanti building is more of an open air marketplace, sort of co-working space that would help further activate and enliven that portion of downtown. So zooming in just gives you a little more sense of what Butterball Junction and this sort of gateway redevelopment starts to sort of look and feel like. We here would sort of remove a portion of West Montgomery and extend Cheeves to West Wilson to clean up that sort of intersection and provide a more legible, sort of flow from north to south, as well as to get rid of the sort of tricky, really problematic intersection formerly of West Wilson here at this corner, and then use that site and use that sort of terminating vista along Bankhead as you sort of make your way around that curve to have a sort of a playful gateway sculpture, play feature, an opportunity, again, to really, I think, knit in usable, functional community space on the south side of downtown, as well as provide a place for sort of historical interpretation and storytelling here in Villerica in the form of a sort of park pavilion and welcome center. And then as we started to move to the north side of downtown, the sort of big move worthy of noting here was what we were calling the north side downtown streetscape in Gold Miners Green, which was looking at taking a segment of Main Street here sort of out, connecting it to Temple, so we have two-way flow along each now. We've removed a large segment of pavement, of asphalt, sort of dedicated to that truck traffic and people getting through downtown, and have now crafted and created a large sort of civic green, a town square here in the heart of downtown Villerica, where once quite a bit of pavement existed. So if we're looking at this sort of no longer in plan, but sectionally, with Temple Street and the buildings, sort of, where we sit here and call this the whole Bishop Justice Center, and looking up to the rail as it exists today, we do have some topography there to work with, but we could use that, to our advantage. And as you start to hit some of those slopes and make up that grade, I think use that as the opportunity to create some sort of amphitheater-esque stairs, these civic steps we were calling them, so people can gather, sort of be here, on either side of this green, and then sort of within it, carve it out, green it up, and give people again another opportunity to be in downtown, to stay in downtown, to bring their children, their grandparents, their friends here, and truly, make a day of it, an evening of it. So that's sort of how this larger space, sort of works. But as we look specifically at then sort of the new Temple Street, again, as I had mentioned, we would maintain two-way travel here. We would have angled parking on one side and parallel on another, so we could be efficient, with how many cars could still fit here. But we would largely design this as sort of a shared street concept. So here we would remove curbs, we would extend some of the sidewalks and amenity spaces, fronting the businesses, as well as the green, and sort of separate them with planting zones, with benches, lighting, other spoilers, other sorts of ways to keep the cars and the people sort of apart and safe. But for large gatherings and special events, this could be, sort of shut down to traffic and converted into a large, free-flowing and ADA accessible sort of plaza space. So that's the sort of big idea for that piece of this. And here is just a sort of a representation, a visualization of if you were standing in that green, what it starts to look like with the trees, with the sort of paving, the new streetscape treatment along that main Temple sort of consolidated segment, the idea of a sort of a shade feature, splash pad, as well as multi-use trails and sort of running along the train itself. So this is sort of where we're working to, and a big idea for what the future of that space could hold, as if you were standing sort of up on Main Street today, which you see here in the upper right. So I think that probably does it in the sort of big term for some of what we were looking at for downtown, for Fullerville. So I know there was quite a bit there, and there are some exciting steps to sort of go as this goes about being adopted, and Chris and co continue to set aside more grant applications to realize components of this. So at this point, I'm happy to sort of stop and take any questions y'all may have.
Okay. I probably should have said earlier today that I had a time limit on this, but we just kept getting to a place where I thought I wanted to let you just keep going.
Oh, okay.
Let me say to everyone, though, because I know you heard things in that presentation that is contrary to what we're going to do. So I don't want anybody to get too far ahead of themselves. This is a concept, and earlier today, on the consent agenda, we approved a resolution to apply for grant money for the engineering and planning of this type of stuff, but there's going to be a lot of details and a lot of work that goes into this. This is what you see here is not what is actually going to happen. I want to make that very clear. Much of it may be, but it'll all depend on how much funding we get.
Yes.
How much funding we get for the actual implementation and construction of this stuff. So I just don't want people to get too far ahead of it.
Oh, absolutely.
'Cause that's sort of my job. I'm going to make sure that we keep this thing level here before I start getting a lot of phone calls about people thinking that trucks are going to show up tomorrow. They're not. The application is going to be next spring, number one. Number two, is this presentation available online, Alyssa? Do we have this out there? Let's make sure that that's out there so that people can refer back to it on the city website. Okay, council, do you have any questions? Anybody have any questions or comments here? All right, seeing none, I want to thank you for the
Yeah.
presentation, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more interactions, as there already have been going
Yeah.
forward. Thank
No,
you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank y'all.
All right, have a good night.
Cool.
All right. Thank you, Chris. We're going to move on to Community Development, C1, RA-06-21, parcel number V02-007-0100, rezoning application for 29.21 acres on Highway 78. There will be a public hearing here. If you're here to speak for that, I'll recognize that in just a few minutes. Right now, I'm going to ask Ron to go ahead and introduce this item for us.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. This application is by Starlight Homes LLC of Alpharetta, Georgia, and they're requesting a rezoning of a vacant parcel that's totaling 29.21 acres from industrial I-2 to single-family attached. The applicant is proposing a total of 268 townhomes. They are proposed to be for sale townhomes, and a density of 9.17 dwelling units an acre with 3 amenities and 2 entrances. Private roads are proposed for this development. They're proposing 12% open space and 22-foot wide units by 40-foot deep with 10-foot patios on each unit. The city's comp plan and future land use map recommend for industrial at this location, which has prompted the staff to recommend a denial for incompatibility with the comp plan and future land use map. The Planning Commission recommended approval and a 5-0 vote with conditions. It's actually one condition. It's to subject the property to a rental cap rate not to exceed 15% of all units.
Okay, Council, does anyone have any questions for Ron? All right, Ms. McPherson. All right, Mr. Young.
Ron, in the work session, you mentioned that you're down to 1 variance needed. Which one is that? Because I'm still counting 5 in all the documents. So what are we down to that they will need if we approve this?
Sure. So the orientation of garages is the one issue that the applicant is not able to overcome. If you recall, at the last city council meeting, the staff did bring a recommendation forward for the ordinance to be changed to allow for front-loaded garages. But we ended up keeping the rear-loaded garages, and this is a response to that decision.
So their townhomes will be 24 feet wide now instead of 22?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so that's 22.
Okay, hold on, just one at a time.
And the driveway length will meet our current ordinances instead of requiring a variance?
Yes, so as a part of one of the changes, the push-pull, that is a 5-foot now requirement. So they do meet for the driveways, the 25 feet, they will have actual 25 feet. It'll be a push-pull.
And the height, 40 foot is the standard, they want 45, they're coming down to 40 feet?
Yes, I see 40 feet.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Young. Ms. McPherson?
Okay, so that was one of my questions. So it is not the 22 feet, it's the 24?
Correct.
Okay. And I remember looking, I know sometimes the initial layout you get may not be the final. There was something in regards to sidewalks. They were showing sidewalks on one side. Currently, the city requires both sides. Is that one of the variants, or is that just something we hadn't gotten to that point to work out with them? Not that it's not that we can't.
I apologize.
Flex.
I'm looking at my notes here from my meeting on the 1st that I referenced in the work session with the applicant. They're actually intending for the width of the townhomes they're going to be applying for an administrative variance from that portion. That was one of the things that came out of that meeting. I know we went back and forth a little bit beyond that, and I'll allow for the applicant to give some testimony on that, but the way that I have it written down here, and I apologize for the mix-up there, but I had two different things here, but it is to apply for an administrative variance, so it does look like they're going to move forward with 22 feet.
All right, hold on. Hold on. Have they applied for an administrative variance?
They have not.
Okay. So at this time, they're looking at 22 feet. And the only variance before the council tonight is the one on the front-loaded garage?
No, that variance is coming at the next meeting in January.
Okay, but that's the only variance that will remain for the council at
Correct.
this point? Okay.
Yes.
So if we move forward tonight, there are still, whatever variances are left will still come before the council after tonight.
They will, yes.
I just want to make sure before we get ahead of ourselves here. Okay, Ms. McPherson, are you finished?
So the sidewalks?
Sidewalks also is going to be handled at 5 feet. But not on as far as on both sides of the roadway. This is a private development with private streets.
So they're gated?
So no, it's not gated though, but it is a private right of way. I might have to defer to the applicant on his on what he wants to do as far as sidewalks. But as far as all of the variance issues that I have here, I don't see anything related to sidewalks.
All right. So let me ask a question. So it certainly is possible to have private streets without a gate. We know that exists. It hasn't been the best thing we've ever done. But do we have requirements for sidewalks on private streets?
I believe that we do. I'm sorry, I'm trying to work through that.
Bobby, come on up, please.
But that's in the development code.
Let's let Bobby, while you take a look at your notes,
Sure,
let's let
thank
Bobby
you.
talk for a
Sorry.
minute.
Mr. Mayor, private streets have to be built to the public street standard. And currently, the development code requires sidewalks on at least one side.
Okay. All right, so we'll get to that question from the applicant in a minute. Thank you. Ms. McPherson, are you finished?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
I read that it was not supported by the comp plan, but at the same time, it was in there, it does have residential around it. It has my favorite trailer park, that one area, and then the apartment complex to the west, can't remember, Villa Trace? Okay.
Yes.
And so in some ways, it didn't seem like it was way out of place as far as that goes, even though industrial was brought into it. And P&Z felt comfortable with it, except that that's where they wanted a cap on rental, correct? 5-0?
That's correct.
With conditions, and their condition was rental cap at 15%?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
All right, is that all? Okay, anyone else wish to be recognized? Mr. Montahan.
So Ron, have you spoken with the developer on whether they're in agreement with the condition on the rental cap?
I have not spoken to the developer particularly about that.
Okay. Since this is going to be private streets, I assume that they're going to have a condo association?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Thought I had one more, but, okay, so just to clarify, so the administrative variance that they're seeking is for the vary from, is it 25 feet to 22 feet? Is that correct? Is that the?
They're looking from going from 24 feet to 22 feet.
Okay, that makes sense, because it's only a 10% cap on administrative variances, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so that could still come to the council if they were to be denied that administrative variance?
It would have to, yes.
But as of now, though, the only variance that they have coming for the council would be the, what exactly?
For the orientation of the garages, they're currently oriented towards the front, and they're looking at doing, we require an orientation towards a rear or to an alleyway.
Okay, so a rear entry garage, essentially?
Mhm.
Okay. but those have not been applied for yet. So we're not, this is only for zoning tonight. So as of tonight, if we approve this for zoning, right, then they're gonna have to build it, if they were to say, they would have to build it to what the zoning ordinance states.
That's
until they
correct.
come back again for a variance.
That is correct,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
And they have applied for just the variance for the orientation of the garages, but not for the administrative variance.
Okay, does anybody else wish to be recognized? All right, Mr. Barber.
It would not be my recommendation to accept the plan with the private road. As the mayor's mentioned, that's not been our best experience. And one way that you could handle that is make that a condition of the zoning.
Okay, all right, let me, I'm going to give an opportunity for the applicant to come up and speak before I open up the public hearing. Is the applicant here?
Yes, yes.
Mr. Fowler, let me let you come up and speak for a little bit, sir, and then we'll do a public hearing after that.
May I hand these out, Mr. Mayor?
Absolutely.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Evening, everyone. Merry Christmas. I'm Joe Fowler from Douglasville, Post Office Box 489. Joe Ingram is here. He is with the development team. Where'd Joe? Moved back over there, excuse me. And then Jeff Matthews, who owns this property, is here as well. Starlight is the developer, Starlight Homes of Georgia. They're seeking this rezoning of the property from industrial 2, that's industrial medium density, to single-family attached for the development of what you see before you as the townhome community. It's correct that the future land use plan designates this area for industrial development. And as Mr. Matthews will tell you in just a few minutes, the property's been offered for sale as industrial for a long, long time, but with no interest at all. Plus, given the current requirements for most industrial uses and also the configuration of this property, this site of just under 30 acres is probably too small for an industrial use. Mr. Matthews, as I said, we'll talk about that with your permission, Mr. Mayor and Council, in just a second. This particular company has been in the Atlanta area for a number of years. They are affiliated with Ashton Homes. They currently have developments in Cartersville, 2 of them, in fact, Loganville, Monroe, and Decatur. The company's been in business for over 30 years. They propose to build the townhomes on this very narrow site, following that site plan and constructing the townhomes in that elevation that you see before you. That was the one that was shown to Planning Commission. The site's 29 acres, but it's loaded with rock. However, after borings and some geotechnical work, the site plan before you was prepared, isolating the bulk of the rock area. The bulk rock area is to the right rear as you look at it on that site plan. There's a total of 268 townhomes proposed that results in a density of 9.17 units an acre. The points of access will be on 78 and Villa Trace. Each unit will have a living area of 1,421 square feet. The price point will be starting in the mid-2s. They will be marketed for sale as fee simple townhome ownership, as Councilman Ms. McPherson said a moment ago. However, there will be a rental cap of 15%, and we consented to that at the Planning Commission. We would consent to that again tonight. The open space for this site is 45%, which well exceeds the requirements of Section 7.13 of the ordinance. That's 12%. There are 3 amenity areas proposed: a pool and cabana, a dog park, and a third amenity. All that will comply with the requirements of Section 7.14 of the ordinance. Sidewalks are, sorry, members of the council, they're 5 feet in width, but it was proposed to be constructed only on one side of the street and to have private streets, private roads. And you see the road network before you. It's a little unusual because of the configuration. 2 long roads with the staggering roads that go perpendicular to the main roads, as you'll see it almost pod by pod as you move through the entire area. That's the proposal. Sidewalks 5 feet in width, constructed on one side throughout the development. But as you can see, they're tightly knit pods of sorts as you move through front to rear. There are, interestingly, 87 spaces for guest parking along the roads, which also feature a number of traffic calming devices. And those are the little nodes that you see periodically throughout the site to slow the traffic down as it moves north to south, or as it looks like here, east to west. We have a letter from the city that there's adequate sewer capacity for the development, and as I indicated, we consent to the rental cap of 15%, and there will be a mandatory HOA. We made that stipulation also before the Planning Commission. With your permission, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Matthews will talk about the suitability of this type of use in this area that was otherwise on the comp plan designated for industrial use, if that's all right.
That's
Mr. Mayor.
fine. He can come on up, and you don't run off, because I got a couple of questions for you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Jeff Matthews, 215 West Bankhead Highway, Villerica, Georgia. Hadn't it been a beautiful day in Villerica? And I certainly appreciate Reverend Spear and that moment of silence for those folks in Kentucky, because they have certainly got a tough line of work ahead of them. But this piece of property, I'll just give you the quick 10,000 foot version. Burnell Redding and I bought this piece of property in '01. So we've had it a little over 20 years. And it was zoned industrial at that time, and we have marketed it for industrial, but with the changing of the industrial climate, other than somebody like a small metal stamping facility, we turned down a concrete mixer plant, a concrete manufacturer, because we didn't feel like that it was really what we needed in that area. Because this piece of property joins, I think, the second planned unit development that was ever done in Carroll County, which is the Carroll Vista area out there. It was done starting in the early 70s, because I was still in high school, by Carroll Service and Development Corporation, a subsidiary of Carrollton Federal Savings and Loan. They got out of their lane a little bit, and a few years later we had the savings and loan crisis, where a lot of them created the Resolution Trust Corporation to get out of it. But that development, that PUD, had commercial, and it had apartments, which is the apartments Ms. McPherson referenced, the Villa Trace apartments. And then it had it went all the way around. That used to be the Jack Lassiter property. And it went all the way around to the storage facility and the Waterford subdivision. That was all part of one big couple of 100-acre farm out there. We bought our piece from Mr. S.T. Leathers Sr.'s son, S.T. Jr. They were part of the Leathers family, and interestingly enough, with the commemoration of the explosion, I went to the funeral home Sunday, and the little lady who died, she lost her husband and father-in-law in the blast. She was 94 years old, Miss Winnie Leathers Dyer. So that Leathers family's been around for a long time. Mr. Leathers, the senior Mr. Leathers, just as an aside, he was a manufacturer's rep for Timex Watch Company. And when I met him the first time, he was telling me about John Cameron Swayze, and it takes a licking and it keeps on ticking, because if you wanted to buy a watch in anywhere in the southeast, if you wanted to go to Rich's or Zales or whatever, or Reeves Jewelry in Villerica, he sold it because he was the manufacturer's rep. But he bought some pretty good land. But this piece of land does not lend itself to industrial in any shape, form, or fashion, because, as Mr. Fowler mentioned, there is a little bit of rock out there. And that's like saying the Titanic took on a little bit of water, because the backside is solid blue granite. The only thing that cuts that rock is a stick of dynamite. So what we would say is that we have held on to this piece of property. We have waited, and we've worked it, and we've farmed the crop. And we finally got somebody that we think will do a development out there that will create some symbiosis. It will create affordable housing, if you will. If a 250 house is affordable, I still have a hard time getting over that, but I'm old. So if you look at it, I think it's an opportunity for us to utilize the piece of property. And I would just request that you affirm the decision of the planning and zoning, and then you can work with the applicant and work with Mr. Fowler as far as any nuances that you're going to put on based on the development code. But I certainly appreciate the opportunity, and if you have any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them.
Okay.
All
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Matthews? All right, we'll catch you if we need you again in a minute. All right, Joe, did this gentleman here want to speak, Mr. Ingram?
I can. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Joe Ingram, Starlight Homes, 3820 Mansell Road, Alpharetta, Georgia, 30022. I guess you got a brief history of our company. We're owned by Ashton Woods Homes. Starlight Homes has been in business in the Atlanta market for about 5 years now, a little over 5 years. And we're a regional home builder. We've got operations in Arizona, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina. More than anything else, I'm here to answer any questions you may have this evening about our development. Sounds like you have quite a few, so maybe with that, I'll just open the floor for whatever questions you have of me.
All right, we'll do that in a minute. Let me ask Joe a couple of questions
Yes.
first. So, Joe, before I do a public hearing on this, let me just ask you, so we've had some not good experiences with private roads in communities. This development appears to have one way in and one way out, is that correct?
There's a second entrance, and it's off Villa Trace.
Oh, back all the way on the other side?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so my question to you is, would the applicant be willing to gate this property at both ends? I know he's standing there, but you represent him, so I'm giving you an opportunity to help him.
If you want to do private roads, it sounds like it used to be gated to me.
I think, you know, if that is what you're looking for, could I ask what the concerns are with private roads?
So, well, not to get too far into it, but private roads oftentimes can become unmaintained.
Sure.
And if your HOA is not strong, and if it doesn't take care of it, or if there are some funding issues or things like that, guess who ends up being asked to do it? Even though I've said no every time, this council has been asked many times to go back and fund those when we didn't take the roads, and we haven't taken them, and they look bad, and they are bad. But we don't want to leave anybody else in that place. If you gate them, it becomes very clear to people that you own the roads, and that they are your responsibility. So I'm asking if you would be prepared, if you need to have, and there's the configuration here, as Joe talked about, does lend itself to private roads. I mean, it does in this particular setup. But if you were to gate it, I think that sends a different message about your ability and responsibility to take care of the roads. If we get to that place, would you be willing to gate the roads on both ends?
I think so, yes.
Okay. When we talk about the 15% rental cap, how do you plan to accomplish that? Would it be through the covenants with the HOA?
That's what we typically find as far as conditions that get placed on really new zonings.
That's about the only way
That's-
I know to accomplish it, but I
Sure.
want to make sure that you're prepared to do that if that
Yes,
were to
sir.
be a condition of the council. Okay. Council, do you have any questions for the applicant before I do a public hearing?
I have
Miss-
a question.
All right, Mr. Montahan.
Go ahead, Leslie.
Mr. Montahan.
Okay.
I recognize you.
Okay, sure. All right, so the access point, what's the distance on the 78 access to the 7861 intersection? Do you know?
I don't know offhand. I can absolutely get you that information, but I don't have it.
Okay, 'cause my question was, I think it's probably the worst kept secret in Villerica that GDOT's going to eventually turn that into a roundabout at 7861. And I'm concerned about the ingress egress on that access point, especially because it doesn't show that you're proposing a decel ACL lane there.
That's right. That was actually one of the things that we were going to mention. As part of our land disturbance permit application, we would perform a traffic study to confirm exactly what it is required in the way of a decel lane or left turn movement into the community.
But I guess also that would be required by GDOT if they issue a driveway permit. Is
Sure.
that correct?
Yes.
Or an entrance, curb cut permit, I guess, technically. Okay, so that's on your radar, though, it sounds like. All right. Could you actually expand on the private streets thing? What's the benefit, I mean, to having private streets in this development in your experience?
So private streets, we do it with the majority of our townhome developments. It is, it takes we're asked to do it in a lot of cases. Cities, counties don't want the maintenance burden of those communities. So it's been more of a request. What I will say is, we talked about public street standards, and we will be required to build them to those standards. So it's not, there's really no cost benefit to us doing it that way, because we're ultimately deficit funding an HOA to make sure it is healthy when we turn it over to where they do have the reserves necessary to go in and be able to repair those streets at a later date.
Right, yeah. And so part of the assessments that the homeowners would have to pay would include maintenance fees for those streets.
That's correct, yes. And until, I mentioned deficit funding, and I don't know how familiar everybody is with that, but until that community is 100% occupied, we're essentially paying the dues for those homes that haven't closed yet.
Right.
And prior to turning over that association to what will be a homeowner-run association, we do a reserve study to make sure that that association has set aside those funds in reserves to go in to be able to make those repairs at a later date once they're necessary.
And so would your associations, would it be formed underneath the Property Owners Act or the Condo Act? Do you know?
It is not a condo, it's not a land condo.
Okay.
It would be a homeowners association, yes.
Okay. But if it's underneath the Property Owners Act, usually the HOAs have a little more teeth behind them. Is that something, how do you normally do them? Just
Our
a traditional
attorneys draft them.
Okay.
I can't answer that question.
Maybe Joe knows it. He can help us out.
What you suggested, one with more teeth.
The POA?
So
Okay.
it's submitted under the POA Act?
Okay.
That's different. All right, go ahead.
Okay. And so, yeah, I mean, I have less hesitations about having private streets if it's a POA. And also, I mean, Joe gave us this really nice, beautiful rendering, but it doesn't really specify types of building materials. Obviously, the ordinance requires certain mixes of building materials. What are you generally proposing, though?
Our exteriors are a combination of brick, and I'm going to say 100% hardy material. However, with the issues in supply chains right now, hardy's a brand name, so I'm going to call it cementitious fiber.
Sure. Yeah.
But it is there is no wood used on the exterior of our homes.
Okay. And what about vinyl siding?
Nah, we don't use vinyl anymore.
Okay. So you wouldn't have an issue stipulating that?
Not at all.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. McPherson.
Yeah, I don't know if it's so much as a question as something I want to know more about, and that has to do with the discussion on private streets or not. I happen to have the infamous neighborhood, that the neighborhood isn't infamous, but the private streets are. But part of the reason that whole problem arose was it was during the crash. We didn't have proper bonds for things. It was supposed to be private streets. They never got done. And these people were promised a gate and, well, they were promised a lot of things. And then, so the streets are still unfinished. The neighborhood's getting built out. So I like the advantage, and it'd be great to hear from you, Tom, on some of this too. I like the advantage of if we don't have to take care of it, if it's maintained. That does us a favor in some ways if it's maintained. As far as it being gated or not, it's hard to have a private street if it's not gated, right? I mean, anybody and everybody can come in, but
that is true. Yes, we honestly do private streets across all of Metro Atlanta that don't necessarily have a gate. Gates are more of a maintenance burden for HOAs than anything else. What typically ends up happening is after they get repaired or replaced for about the third time, they get sick of doing it and they pin them over.
Yeah. Well, I detest gated communities. Not living in them. I just don't want to live in one.
Sure.
Other people can live in them, but
Sure.
Okay. That's really all. I want to hear a little bit more about the advantage, disadvantage, why somebody thinks we should go one way or the other way on private streets. Because this is very different from my neighborhood that has them and
All
what
right.
occurred there.
All right. Anybody else have any questions before we take that up? Okay.
Can I say one other thing, just to?
Go ahead.
Ms. McPherson had asked about just the streets being completed. So it's my understanding, and I would assume it's the same in Villerica, that in order to record our final plat and actually pull building permits, those streets have to be, at least the base coat has to be down. I'm not sure if the city requires topping, but if it was a matter of our even escrowing funds, placing some type of bond on the property to cover the cost of that topping in the event something happened and it ultimately didn't get done, then that would be something that we could
let me
entertain
just
that
say,
idea.
you are right that that's how that works now. We have things in place now, but when that one occurred,
Sure.
it wasn't in place, and it wasn't, and what was in place was not properly maintained. That was
Gotcha.
some 20 years ago. So,
Okay.
all right, I need to do a public hearing, but let me say, Tom, do you want to talk about, is there anything you want to add about the private streets? Because at the end of the day, the private streets is really, it's not that big of an issue since you are submitting this HOA to the POA, because that POA gives a lot of teeth to the HOA to collect the funds. In other words, they're going to collect the funds to be able to do this maintenance. The gates, to me, though, are important because I think that they show that these are private streets. Even the community she's talking about was supposed to be gated, but it never was. If it had been gated, the homeowners would never have had the confusion about who owned it. And in terms for you got to build the road anyway. It's going to cost you the same whether you then give it to the city and the city takes over the maintenance or not. So to me, if you do all of that, you put the gates on it, and you have the POA, you've submitted the HOA to the POA, my guess is that I'm better off not having to maintain those streets. Go ahead, Tom.
And I don't care about the gates, but tell us what you got.
I mean, my recommendation, like I said, would be that it's built with private streets, and if the reason the developer recommended that is because of Atlanta or something, that's not relevant to me. But we also have water and sewer issues because of where our utilities are going to be if we don't own the road. Because we're going to put the sewer in the road, most likely.
Do we know that? Is that where the
We
sewer's
do
going to be?
know that, and we encumber that with a easement that is dedicated to the city in lieu of what would be public right-of-way with
Right.
public streets.
I would also say, and I don't disagree with you, I started out by saying that, but at the end of the day, look how many units there are in here, in this community. You just want this open for people just to free flow drive through here? And then when it's time for us to come through here and do all this maintenance, we're gonna have to deal with all this? I mean, it's just a thought. I mean, I'll ask the council to think about it. Let me do a public hearing.
May I ask a question,
Yeah, all
of Chief Mansur, perhaps, on the private street question and gates?
Mike, would you like to come up? We won't be able to hear you if you don't. Is that handheld on? Come on up here, Chief. Did we wake you up? All right.
Hello,
Go ahead,
hello.
Matthew.
So, Chief, I mean, is there an enforcement issue, or does that cause you complications when if something's going on, you have to respond to a call in this development, if it has gates, or if it's on private property versus public property, et cetera, anything like that?
Well, we have other places where they have gates. The problem is sometimes getting in those gates to get to the call,
Okay.
obviously. Sometimes we'll get there, codes don't work that we have, electricity's out, the gate's not working or whatever, so it definitely hinders us getting to those properties.
So, I mean, sometimes, like, we've talked about just different issues in the past, and, you kind of told me, well, we can't really enforce that because it's on private property. Does the fact that these are private streets, does that mean you can't give someone a ticket for speeding in these?
No, we
How
definitely
does that
can't
work?
enforce traffic laws on private streets
Okay.
or parking lots. The only thing you can charge somebody like with DUI or something like that on a private street. But everything
Okay.
else, we can't enforce traffic laws on.
But if there's some other kind of non-traffic crime, breaking and entering, stuff like
Yes,
that doesn't cause
we
an
can
issue?
still respond.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right, anybody got any questions for the chief? All right, That was your grand appearance for today. All right, let me do a public hearing. Is there anybody here who would like to speak for or against this rezoning? All right, come forward. Please give us your name and address for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
My name is Joanne Harrell, 212 Twin Lakes Road, Villerica. I own the property at 809 West Bankhead Highway, west of the property being considered for rezoning. I want to express my concern for the protection of my property as well as other property owners, which our existing underground sanitary sewer lines cross the property which you are considering for rezone. My concern is when heavy equipment traffic's moved on site and ultimately earth moving operations will be occurring, that our existing utilities would be crushed or blocked by the new construction. I am not necessarily opposed to the project, but I want assurance that my property and other utility lines have been put in place for nearly 50 years will not be impacted at my expense for this development. I ask the mayor and council, if this project is approved, place some restrictions on the developer owner to protect our existing in-place utilities. Further, to keep dust down with construction operations so not to interfere or hinder other businesses. Maybe place a type barrier on the properties to help the noise as this project would ultimately create. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, is there anybody else here who would like to speak for or against this item? Sir, if you'll come forward, please give us your name and address for the record, and we'll recognize you for 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Bill Awalt, last name spelled A-W-A-L-T. I live at 301 Villerica, Villerica. I really have 3 complaints. Number 1 is noise. More noise. And they started building out there on the highway. They extended 61 down there behind the fire department, where they have it right now. Just got noisier and noisier. Okay. I realized it was zoned for industrial. Now you're asking for it to have all these homes built over there. Another thing I'm concerned about besides the noise is a possibility of crime. Not so much in the very present, but in 3, 5, 10 years to come. People come in, people leave. It's kind of crowded, lots of houses. That's not going to be the most desirous place to live. I don't care how much it costs. And the other thing is, it's a lot of litter out there right off of Villa Trace going into Highway 78. And as it goes from Villa Trace and intersects 78 and Villa Trace, where it intersects, it is busy. There is no traffic light there. The school is right across the street from there. If you ask me, the most ideal thing that it could have ever been would be the school have some kind of pavilion activity or something over there for them to go to. That's close proximity for them. And to me, it'd be safer. But that's my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else here who would like to speak for or against this rezoning? All right, seeing no one else, I'll close the public hearing portion. I'll revert back to staff. Council, do you have any questions for Ron or for the applicant? All right. Ron, do you have anything else you want to add?
Yes.
Right, go ahead.
I took a look at the sidewalk issue. I consulted the department as well. I think the reason for the confusion here is because we have 2 regulations that say 2 different things. on sidewalks. One is held in the zoning ordinance and one is held in the development code. And so what Bobby ended up coming up and indicating was what is in the development code. So the zoning ordinance would require sidewalks on both sides of streets. And it doesn't specify what streets. It doesn't say if it's private, public. It just indicates right-of-ways. So that's something that we would have to, of course, being that it's a more restrictive regulation, we would have to go with two sidewalks, one on each side of the street for the entirety of the development.
Okay, but that's not, that we don't have to take that up here. That's in the code
Correct.
already, correct? Okay.
Yes.
All right, so you have anything else to add? All right, so what's before us now is a planning commission recommendation of approval with conditions, and that single condition was a rental cap not to exceed 15%. I would suggest that that be made part of the HOA covenants as part of that condition. And if we're going to allow for the private streets, I would suggest that we also have a condition of gates on both sides. But does anyone here wish to be recognized for a motion?
Mayor,
Yep, Mr. Montan.
just before I make this motion, if there is some interest in amending this motion, I would be willing to do so. Just put it out that way. But I move to approve the rezoning request from Starlight Homes LLC of Villerica, Georgia, for a rezoning for I-2 to SFA with the conditions that the owner applicant agrees to submit the property to the Georgia Property Owners Act, OCGA 44-3-22 and subsequent. Owner applicant agrees to include in the declaration covenant restrictions for the property to include a restriction with a maximum of 15% of non-owner occupied units or homes. Owner applicant agrees that no vinyl siding or similar material shall be used on the unit's facades.
All right, I have a motion. Is somebody writing this down? And I have a second from Ms. Marchman. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Ms.
'cause
McPherson.
I want to make sure I fully understand the motion. Okay, so the 15% I've got, right? And I know they're already agreeable to that. The vinyl siding, I understand, and they don't use vinyl siding. The OC, whatever, was that related to the type of HOA?
Yes.
Yes.
Which makes it a,
Property Owners
Property,
Act
okay.
HOA.
And was there
type of
some
HOA.
other aspect to that I missed?
It gives the HOA or the association greater ability to pursue their fines and
Right,
fees. and-
okay. But
and-
aside from those, was there anything else in that motion? Did that cover the items you were,
Yeah, those are the three that I included.
okay, then I'm good. Okay.
Mr. Carter.
Yeah, I didn't hear you say a gated community. Does that mean you don't consider it to be gated? Is it private streets? What's going on?
I don't have concerns for the gated community if it is a POA. And I also believe that I think you get a higher quality development in some sense of the word if it's private streets.
So
There's
those are private streets or public streets?
My understanding, these would be private streets, so I don't necessarily think there should be, I'm not a believer in the gates, so.
I'm going to interrupt you just for a second, Mr. Carter. My suggestion would be, though, if you're going to approve this with private streets, that you require gates on both ends. If you're not going to approve it with private streets, you're going to make them be public streets, I have less of a question about the gates. But I do think the gates are going to be significant when it comes to private streets.
Mr. Montahan, I would offer an amendment to your motion to add gates to the private streets.
I'm not, I'm indifferent on the gates, so I will accept your amendment.
All right. Is there any further discussion? All right, Mr. Mecklin,
Yeah,
let's
just-
make
I'm
sure
just-
we get it right.
I'm thinking through the procedure there. I think you'd be better off with Mr. Young's motion to amend, to have a second to that, and then vote on that amendment
Okay.
before you actually vote on the main motion.
All right, so Mr. Young made a motion to amend the motion by adding a condition that requires gates onto private streets. Ms. Marchman has seconded that. Is there any discussion on that? All in favor? All opposed? All right, that will carry. Now I need a motion. Now I need.
You have a motion.
Now I need a vote on the original motion, which was Mr. Montahan's motion.
As amended.
As amended. All right. All in favor, Mr. Montahan's motion as amended.
The original one?
Yep.
As
All.
amended.
As amended, never mind, I got it.
All. Did you raise your hand?
Uh,
All right. All opposed.
Okay.
All abstain.
No,
All
I
right.
do not have a proper reason for abstaining, so, put me on a yes, because it's not going any other way, even though I oppose the amendment.
All right. So that'll pass unanimously. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you. All right. Let's move on to C2. RA-10-21, parcel number V07 0110153, V07 0110003, and V07 0110230, 135 and 189 Commerce Drive rezoning application. This item will also have a public hearing. Ron, would you present this item?
Yes. MMCC LLC of Villerica, Georgia has requested a rezoning of 3 vacant parcels as outlined by the mayor, totaling 16.89 acres from MF1 to C2, or MF1 and C2 to to C2. Excuse me. This property has come before the city back in 2019, and I provided minutes that was requested of that meeting in the work session. And this application is for 305 apartments. The 2019 application was for 195 units, so there is an increase that is proposed here. The what's happening with these zone changes here and what was proposed, if you recall back in 2019, the entirety of these lots, 2 of the lots were for MF1 and 1 was to remain C2. And currently now the property owner, being that the density has increased the way that it has, he's looking to go to an MF2 zoning category for 2 of those same 2 lots, and the 3rd lot, which had the Pizza Hut on it, is proposed to have its property boundaries changed. So the western property boundary, which would be the back of it, would be shifting further west to align with the Hardee's lot as well. So that would prompt a change from MF1 to C2 for that small portion of the property. Otherwise, the staff is recommending approval with one condition, which is to provide a final survey identifying the proposed parcel boundaries. And the Planning Commission also has approved the project with conditions, the same condition.
All right, tell me again what you want me to see in these minutes.
Yes. So in the minutes, there was discussion of.
Where is it at?
There's.
Is it B1? All right, that's it. B1. All right, go
Yes. B1. So as a part of, and in these minutes, and as a part of the discussion that we had in 2019, there was a requirement for a fence, or a request for a fence. I don't believe, based off of these minutes, that it ever made it to a condition. I also checked the folder itself, and there was no condition there. But there was a requirement or something that the applicant had agreed to at that time. But it's actually had never made it into the minutes.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions for Ron at this point?
I have a question.
All right, Mr. Montahan.
Ron, so besides the fence condition, agreement, whatever it is, was there any other items from that rezoning that applied back then, or where the developer agreed to?
Only the fence is the only thing that I had written in the folder,
Okay.
and the minutes don't show anything else.
Okay.
All right, anybody else? Ms.
Yes.
McPherson?
Ron, when we originally looked at this with the other builder that was going to come in, we talked about the quality or the high-endedness of it. Are we looking at something similar? Now, I know we're looking at about 100 additional, and there was the concern about the fencing, but what are we looking, I believe it was also gated.
So this project, they're proposing a pool, amenities, clubhouse, bark park or a dog park. In addition to stormwater facilities on site, it is gated as well, and and also I don't never say this word correctly, but is it botch court or
Bocce.
Bocce. I can't get it right.
I have no idea. What is it?
And in addition to open space and courtyards throughout the development. So it is proposed, being that I'm relatively familiar with this developer, Wood Partners. They have very high-end apartments, very high-end multifamily throughout the entire metro area. Some of the best, honestly, in our region. So that kind of puts me a little bit more at ease with who would actually be developing these and building these apartments. It seems like the flavor is very, very similar to the one back in 2019. That group apparently, because of the coronavirus pandemic, could not move forward with the project at that time, and that's why Wood Partners has come in now. But there's been a shift of density, of course, an increase in density.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Just to clarify.
Okay.
That MF1, MF2, multifamily, lower density, multifamily 2 is a higher density, more people, only because it's a pain if you're sitting in the audience and you know what these things mean. That's all.
Okay, Mr. Young.
Ron, do you know if the applicant would be willing to consider an HOA with a rental cap covenant?
I have not had that conversation with him. I would have to defer directly to him.
Why would they be a rental cap?
No.
But it is a rent.
They
Yeah,
are
it's-
apartments.
Oh, they're,
Yeah.
they're
This is
apart, okay,
apartment.
forget it.
I was
It's
a little
apartments,
there.
all right.
So they can't have a cap. The cap is 100%.
Right.
And
Ron.
they need to maintain that.
Right, yeah.
All right, anybody else?
Ron.
Mr. Mompton.
And perhaps I overlooked this because I actually had a concept plan of this at my office, but I noticed in the packet, there's not a staff report or a concept plan or any other supporting materials like we usually get for zonings.
That's odd. I definitely submitted all my items.
I just have the
With
agenda
staff
submittal
report.
and then the council minutes, and I checked the work session, and it was the same thing.
Yeah, I saw all my stuff loaded up there earlier today,
I know honestly.
like maybe an hour before the meeting.
Load off the documents.
Okay.
Can go back to the
It was there, because I went through all of them on Saturday. It's not
Okay.
there right now, but it was.
They're not there right now.
Okay.
So, all right, do we have any other questions for Ron? All right, is the applicant here? Are you the applicant? All right, Mr. Matthews, come forward. Give us your name and address and tell us a story.
Jeff Matthews, 215 West Bankhead Highway, Villerica, Georgia. With your permission, I'd like to hand these out.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
I wanted everybody to know that the increase in density and the consequential change in zoning was at my request. If you remember back when the initial developer was involved,
Is your mic on?
all they could see their way to was about a 200-unit development, but I kept badgering them about it, being 300. And then when we switched development companies, they've agreed to that, and that's the plan that you're looking at.
Okay,
And that's
but-
why we're asking for MF2.
But that was at your request, and I remember
Right.
us talking about this. All right, I appreciate you clarifying that. All right, Mr. Matthews.
Okay, thank you again for the opportunity to speak this evening. But this, as Ron said, we had a really good, high-quality developer lined up to start with. And then one of those things that nobody can plan, when COVID hit, the world changed for a lot of people. And it certainly changed in the finance world as far as the equity side. People
started putting their money, I guess, with Mr. Devane in gold with Roslyn Capital. But there's nobody that would finance an apartment deal. And then I have kept working on this because it's just what I do, and got in touch with Wood Partners. And as you can see from the packet that I handed out, they are a national developer, not just Metro Atlanta. They do national developments and do a high quality job. This would be a completely private street, gated, and in addition, during the meantime, we have worked with a national sit-down restaurant, and that's why we tore down the Pizza Hut, because it had outlived its usefulness. And rather than put in another Chinese restaurant, we chose to tear it down. And we want to expand that parcel because the parking requirements are such for a pretty good sized restaurant that we would need more space than just is provided by that Pizza Hut lot. But it would all be part and parcel with that corridor there. Also, we have had conversations with the school board in the meantime about the possibility of opening Meadowlark Drive. It has been closed for a long time, but we have talked with them, and I would leave that up to city staff and the school board to work out the details on that, but we would certainly be amenable and cooperative with that effort if that should be pursued. But if you have any further questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Matthews?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Montahan.
What is I remember from the previous development, the mix of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, and the 3-bedroom, I don't remember the exact number, maybe Ron has that from his file, but was relatively low. What is the proposed mix for this development?
160 single family or single bedroom, 121 2-bedroom, and 24 3-bedrooms.
And I believe that original one had 13 3-bedrooms, if I'm not mistaken, something like that.
I've slept since then.
But now it was a lower number of units too. I bet you have. All right, Mr. Montahan, you finished?
So would you, Jeff, would you agree to a stipulation that caps your 3 bedrooms to less than 25?
Yeah, to 24, that's what they want.
Well, I'm just going to give you one-room flexibility, if you don't mind.
I'll be glad to. Yes,
all right. And then would you agree to a stipulation that if you get the green light from the school board and the city to open Meadowlark, that you would do so?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right, anybody else? Okay. All right. Let me do a public hearing on this. Is there anybody here who would like to speak for or against this rezoning? All right, seeing none, I will close the public hearing portion. I'll revert back to staff. So it looks to me like staff recommendations, the staff recommends approval with conditions, and that one condition is approval contingent upon the recording of the final survey identifying the proposed parcel boundaries. But planning and zoning also approved with conditions. Is that the same condition? Okay, just
It's the same.
one. Just the one condition.
Just the one.
Okay. All right, Mr. Young, did you need to be recognized? Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant or for staff before I allow for a motion? Okay. Does anybody want to be recognized for a motion?
I move.
All right, Ms. McPherson.
I move to approve the rezoning request from MMCC LLC of Villerica, Georgia, to rezone from MF1 to MF2 for parcel V070110230 with the aforementioned conditions as outlined by staff.
Okay.
Do I have to do these one at a time?
We're going to do them one at a time.
Okay.
Second.
All right, so I have a motion to approve the rezoning request from MMCC LLC of Villerica, Georgia for rezoning from MF1 to MF2 for parcel number V070110230 with the aforementioned conditions as outlined by staff. And I have a second from Mr. Carter. Is there any discussion?
Mayor,
Mr.
I would like
Montahan.
to make a motion to amend Ms. McPherson's motion to add conditions that the unit or development have no more than 25 3-bedroom units, and then add another condition that if permitted or approved by the city and the school board, that the owner applicant would reopen Meadowlark Drive or the Meadowlark Drive extension.
All right, is there a second to Mr. Montahan's motion?
Second.
There's a second. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor? Okay, that is unanimous. Now, can I go back to Ms. McPherson's motion?
Correct.
Is there any discussion on that before I call it? I have a first and a second already. All right, all in favor? All right, that's unanimous. Okay, who would like to be recognized for a motion?
I move to approve.
Ms. McPherson, let's give the train a minute.
I have a teacher's voice and a
All right,
microphone.
Ms.
It's okay.
McPherson, go ahead.
I move to approve the rezoning request from MMCC LLC of Villerica, Georgia, for a rezoning from MF1 to MF2 and C2 for parcel V070110003 as shown on the submitted site plan and with the aforementioned conditions as outlined by staff.
Second.
Who writes these?
All right, I have a motion to approve the rezoning request from MMCC LLC of Villerica, Georgia for a rezoning from MF1 to MF2 and C2 for parcel V070110003 as shown on the submitted site plan and with the aforementioned conditions as outlined by staff. I have a second from Mr. Carter. Is there any discussion?
Mayor,
Mr. Montahan.
because this parcel also includes the residential portion, I would make the same amendment, adding the stipulation and the Meadowlark Drive extension.
Is there a
reopening.
second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor?
This is
Okay, so that will be amended. And now let me go back to Ms. McPherson's original motion. I have a second from Mr. Carter. Is there any discussion? All in favor? All right, that's unanimous. Now, if you're going to do another one, and you're going to agree to that, can we do that in it?
Yes, I just wasn't sure why we had to do it if it was agreed to. I guess it's to nail it down.
So we don't run into the same issue with the fence that was never
Okay,
formally put in the minutes.
okay.
Which,
All
by
right.
the way, we haven't required that here after much discussion about it.
All
So
right, Ms. McPherson.
I would move to approve the rezoning request for MMCC LLC of Villarica, Georgia, for a rezoning from MF1 to MF2 and C2 for parcel V070110153 as shown on the submitted site plan and with the aforementioned conditions as outlined by staff and with the added amendment or added conditions of
25
25 on the
units
three-bed.
on the three-bedroom
On the three-bedroom and
max.
Open Meadowlark Drive.
Open Meadowlark Drive if approved by the city and county.
the
school
county
board.
school system. Got it.
Second.
You got that? All right, got a second. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor? All right, that's unanimous. Whew. I think people are writing this to overwork me. Okay. All right, you got
Thank
that.
you.
Jeff, you good? Everybody good? All right, let's move on. Let's get to C3, Amendment to the Villerica Zoning Ordinance, Section 8.022T, Accessory Structures in Residential Zoning Districts. There will also be a public hearing on this. Mr. Montesinos, go ahead.
Yes, let me apologize for that rather lengthy LCI presentation.
You owe me that.
I do indeed.
Go ahead.
This is an amendment to the zoning ordinance regarding the setback, separation, and the scale of accessory structures on the same lot in residentially zoned districts. This came about after a couple of projects in town that really demonstrated that the existing code did not have the clarity to prevent some rather unscaled development to occur. And so we've made some recommendations, or at least drafted an amendment to the code to address those specific issues.
All right. Council, do you have any questions for Chris? All right. Ms. McPherson? No? Okay. If there are no questions, I'm going to do a public hearing. Is there anybody here who would like to speak for or against this amendment? All right. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. I'll revert back to staff and council. Do you have any questions for Chris now? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Yes.
Ms. McPherson?
Since we didn't get to connect and ask them ahead of time, now I see that P&Z went 4-0 on this. And what you mean by scale is I build my house and then next to it I build a barn that's 3 times the size of my house. That's kind of what you mean, to try to control that sort of thing, right?
Correct, yeah. It puts a maximum percentage of your primary floor space area and translates that over to the secondary structure.
Okay, so my primary concern, let me ask this first. Under, this is on page 3, accessory structures in residential zoning districts, under the title of accessory structure detached. It says no business, so it says it's incidental to the main structure, private garage, automobile storage, tool house, that sort of thing, greenhouse. But what about if they have a workroom there, because it does say a home workshop, if they're one of those businesses that we allow where they fix clocks, or in my case, there's a lady in Douglasville that makes name tags, and it's not something that brings a lot of cars.
Sure.
What's the issue with that? Because it says no business.
Well, I think what it's trying to reference is you building a garage in the back of your house and you turn it into like a service repair shop. Really, that is predicated more on the home business part of the ordinance, as far as what would be permitted under a specific zoning district.
So this wouldn't stop that?
That's correct.
Okay,
yes.
all right, that's really about all I need on that one. Not involving the conduct of a business or as a guest house residence, okay. Exemptions. It says if it's 200, okay, describe to me 200 square feet.
That would be like a 10 by 20
okay.
outbuilding, like a garden shed.
Yeah, okay, so then the main concern I had on that, because we talk about things that are allowed, like a children's playhouse, shed, those do not require permitting. Does that mean they can, you can just put those in? I can
Yes.
put a children's playhouse in my backyard and that sort of thing. However, I'm on a half acre. I'm just using me as an example to make it easy to understand. I'm on a half acre and it says up to a half acre, I have a maximum of 1 accessory building. If I have a playhouse, can I still have a storage room, a work shed that's more than 200 square feet?
If your playhouse is larger than 200 square feet, then yes, it would be limited to 1. But that does not preclude one from requesting a variance from that part of the code.
Okay, because that's my concern, is if somebody has a half acre and they want to put a few things there, I just want to make sure we're not being too strict.
Sure. Well, the 200 square foot limit is codified with respect to the threshold for requiring a building permit. And in the case where you are, for example, if you had a gazebo, that would not apply. That's not an enclosed structure. So if we're just looking at, I'm creating a studio apartment above a garage, that would be your 1 per acre allowance. If you wanted that, plus you wanted a 400 square foot workshop as well, then that would have to go to the city council for a variance.
Or if you wanted a 205-foot one.
Correct.
Square foot. Okay, so about the height, if it's not closed in, does it not matter? So if somebody has a canopy that goes over their motorhome, I don't, but I've seen things like that. How does that play in since it's not closed in? It's one of those metal things with
That would be considered a carport.
Okay.
And that would still have to follow the code as far as the square footage of the footprint of that enclosure or lack of enclosure.
On a half acre, could you do a granny flat and have a shed?
You could do a granny flat and a shed as long as it's within the maximum
It has
square
to fit-
footage based on the size of the primary structure.
Right,
Correct.
okay. And I read all through that, and you could still do the other. And lastly, I think, you talked about building materials and that sort of thing, and that it had to be architecturally compatible with the principal dwelling on the lot and the exterior. So does it have to be, your shed wouldn't have to be?
No.
I mean, the shed doesn't have to look like the house. If there's hardy plank on the house, it doesn't.
What we're trying to do is to ensure, like, for example, if you have a four-sided brick house and you want to build a metal building in the back, that we would want the accessory structure to be complementary to the architecture or the exterior materialing used in the primary structure.
So if you were building a granny flat and you had a four-side brick, would it need to be a four-sided brick?
No,
Or just maybe?
typically what we would do is say, now I can't speak.
You know what I'm getting at,
Yeah.
right? The reason I'm asking these questions is trying to see how restrictive is
Correct.
this?
What I would say in my discretion in saying what is considered to be architecturally compatible, I would say if you did like a 4-foot brick knee wall and did the rest of the structure above it in some other approved material, that would be complementing the primary structure. It doesn't have to look exactly like it. It doesn't have to mimic the exact material composition, but it needs to at least have some sort of homage or relationship.
Like
between
maybe
the-
I wouldn't put a purple metal, okay, got it. I think I understand that. And I lied, I have one more, but it was an accidental lie. It says this is the last page, page 7, under use. So it's E, use, evidence of separate dwelling, and it talks about the presence of such facilities or equipment, like meters, mailbox, okay, mailbox, got that, but kitchen equipment or sink or cabinets, that shall be considered prima facie, did I say that right? I was looking
Prima
at
facie.
attorneys. I need, Foss?
Facie.
Facie.
Prima facie.
I knew it was a legal term. Evidence that such accessory building or such portion of a principal dwelling is a separate and distinct dwelling unit. So all I wanted to make sure is somebody can still have their workshop out there or their
Correct.
workroom, and they can have cabinets and a sink.
Sure.
Because this makes it sound like if you have that, we're looking at it like it's a separate living residence area. It's not clear to me.
Well, I think the intent of that section is to address that if you have an accessory dwelling unit, which is what the preceding sentence is, that it cannot be separately metered from the primary structure and therefore be
That makes sense.
you're changing a single family into a multifamily lot. And so what it's saying is that the utilities, if you have such things, have to be tied into the primary structure.
So the context, because of where it's located on this, is referencing having utilities attached and that sort of thing.
Yeah, accessory dwelling units, correct.
So in your opinion, this wouldn't be a problem for somebody to have some of those items in the references I gave of a workroom or something like that?
Yeah, this ordinance was really intended to address the current ordinance shortcomings with respect to two specific developments that occurred that we want to make sure moving forward do not happen again.
Okay. So next, I just want you to know, usually I ask most of these questions. I go in and ask the staff member a number of them ahead of time and try to clear it up. We didn't get a chance to do that because of the schedule, but thank you for your patience.
Somebody was busy baking bread.
Okay. All right. Has anybody else got any questions on this? I hope all this isn't used in court someday, because we've tried to interpret every single piece of this thing. Has anybody got a motion?
Yeah, I got one.
Mr. Carter.
I move to approve the amendment to section 8.02, parentheses 2, parentheses close T, accessory structures in residential zoning districts.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion to approve the amendment to section 8.02, 2T, accessory structures in residential zoning districts. I have a second from Mr. Young. Is there any discussion? All in favor? All right, that's unanimous. All right, Chris, you now have C4, an amendment to Article 3, Villerica zoning ordinance amending section 8.032C, temporary use and structure standards. There'll also be a public hearing. Go ahead.
Yes, this section of the ordinance is new. It's to address temporary sales, leasing, and construction trailer facilities with respect to ensuring that there's an aesthetic compliance with lower skirting, which would prevent you from viewing the wheel attachments, as well as specified parking and landscaping requirements.
All right, does anybody have any questions for Chris before I have a public hearing? Okay, hearing no questions, I'll open this up for a public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak for or against this amendment? All right, seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. I'll revert back to council. Does anyone have any questions for Chris now? If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the amendment to section 8.03, parentheses 2, section C, temporary construction, sales, or leasing trailers / offices.
All right, I have a motion to approve the amendment to section 8.032C, temporary construction, sales, or leasing trailers / offices. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Montahan. Is there any discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. All right, let's move on to C5, amendment to the Villerica zoning ordinance, chapter 8, supplementary standards for specific uses, subsection 8.02, 2P, solar energy conversion equipment, and Q, wind energy conversion equipment. There'll also be a public hearing. Chris?
This section is primarily a supplement to an existing section of the code that reads under the specific uses or specific conditions for approved uses. It says solar energy conversion equipment, and then it says nothing afterwards. So it doesn't give you any insight as far as any regulatory review of, where these equipment is placed. If it has an adverse impact on adjoining properties, the scale of these types of facilities, whether it be on someone's rooftop or an actual solar farm, where are those appropriate? How are they appropriate with respect to installing them on non-residential structures? So this ordinance was originally intended to address those fineries. At the same time, we did bring in the secondary section, adding in the wind conversion for power turbines. What this really addresses is the use of wind conversion to energy generating equipment that's done in a non-commercial setting. So we're not talking about the big supersized ones that you see out there in the Midwest and such. We're talking about smaller domestic systems that you might see, for example, that would have like a pole with a whirly thing on the top of it. So try to make sure that there are allowances for those uses where it is otherwise silent, but to the same respect, making sure that we minimize any potential detriment to adjoining property owners.
Okay. Did you address Mr. Young's concern about the wind energy?
With the noise?
With the noise?
I did.
Okay. That's been submitted. I think I heard you say that. Yes. All right. Do you have any questions, council? Does anybody have any questions for Chris before I open up a public hearing? All right. Hearing no questions, I will open a public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak for or against this amendment? All right.
I don't want to speak against the amendment, but I have a question.
Do you want to speak for it? Come on up. I'm going to give you 3 minutes. Just say whatever you need to say. Give us your name and address for the record, and we will give you 3 minutes.
My name is L. Nathan Hare. I live in Twin Oaks Subdivision, 636 Nine Oaks Circle. My question is to the last part of what he was addressing, the solar energy. how does that affect the individual homeowner?
Okay.
Is it, can you have it or can you not have it? Or, how is it set up or structured for us as individual homeowners? That's my question.
Okay, thank you. Chris, if you'll come up, we'll give you an opportunity to answer that for the gentleman.
In short, there are a couple of points. Number one is that if you have a roof-mounted system, that it cannot be located above the highest pitch of the roof. Number two is that you're not allowed to have a ground-based solar system. And where practical, the solar panels themselves should not be oriented to the primary or the front of the home unless scientifically or from a practical standpoint of solar collection that is not, that there's no other alternative. So those three are really the only thing it means as a homeowner. Otherwise, you're certainly allowed to have them.
No other alternative or no practical alternative?
No practical alternative. In other words, like if you could mount it to the side gable as opposed to putting it on the front, and it could be demonstrated based on the fact that the sun goes from east to west, and if you're a north or south facing exposure, you know what your options would be.
Okay.
So we would take those on an individual basis.
All right, let me finish the public hearing. Is there anybody else here who would like to speak for or against this item? All right, hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Come back up, Chris. Council, do you have any questions for Chris?
I want, do you have to, is this something you can do or you cannot do?
It's
you
something
don't
that
have to do it.
No, you don't have to do it. It's
Yeah, I
something
think
you
that's
can
sort of
do
what he
if
was
you
trying
want.
to get at.
Yeah.
Is it have to do it or you can do it if you want to do it?
You can do it if you want.
Okay.
It's basically just it's providing a framework for if you do it. And I think the issue was that we were having a larger volume of houses over in the Liberty Point neighborhood that we were starting to see a proliferation of solar panels, and wanted to make sure that we had some regulations in place so that these things just were not just everywhere.
Okay, all right, any other questions for Chris? All right, would anybody like to be recognized for a motion?
I move to approve the amendment to section 8.02, paragraph 2 of the Villerica zoning ordinance to amend subsection P, solar energy conversion equipment, and to add and subsection Q, wind energy conversion equipment.
All right, I have a motion to approve the amendment to section 8.022
Time to go.
of the Villerica zoning ordinance to amend subsection P, solar energy conversion equipment, and to add and Q, wind energy conversion equipment.
Second.
And I have a second from Mr. Carter. Is there any discussion? All in favor? All right, that's unanimous.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chris. All right, Jennifer, present fiscal year 2022 budget amendments 14 through 21 again.
That was the signal that we're officially starting to lose it.
Somebody puts all these things on the agenda.
Is that a royal we?
All right, go ahead.
Okay. All right. These are the budget amendments that were presented earlier. First one is a repair for a police vehicle that we received insurance proceeds for about $8,000. So we're adding that to maintenance and repair of vehicles. Next is the transfer of a part-time park program assistant from events to athletics. Remember last year we split recreation into multiple departments. Well, now we have a part-time person that we want to utilize in a different part of recreation. So we're transferring that expense to one of the different recreation departments. And lastly, this is the Microsoft 365 migration. Jim, I think, presented this at the last meeting. This is a $50,000 expense.
All right, are there any questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to adopt the resolution amending the 2022 fiscal year budget pursuant to section 2-71 of the city charter.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. I was going to read it, but I don't know if I have it up fast enough. Have a motion to adopt the resolution amending the 2022 fiscal year budget pursuant to Section 2-71 of the city charter. I have a second. Any discussion? All in favor? All right, that's unanimous. Okay, you doing the financial update? I guess Jennifer
Just wanted to see if I still got it.
had to leave. Well, I'm sure you do. Knock it out.
All right, this is the financial update for October 2021. So this is the first month of our new fiscal year. If this thing will work. Oh, there it goes. Okay, cash. At this point last year, we had $18 million total. This year, we have $27 million. Part of that is the ARPA money we've received, about $3 million of that. We've also received the money for Pumpkin Town through our new SPLOST, which is $4.5 million at the bottom. All right, residential permits. This is comparing 1 month to 1 month. So October of 2020, we had received 33 building permits compared to October of 2021. We have received 13 building permits, water and sewer taps corresponding with that. Again, this is just residential, not commercial. This is just kind of a extra slide here, how well we did on Ghost Train this year. We sold over 3,800 tickets for the Ghost Train, and the revenue is just under $50,000. All right, this is water and sewer. This is kind of our income statement, for lack of a better term. You can see the revenue section up at the top. At this point, again, this is comparing October to October since we're just 1 month into the fiscal year. Last year, we had brought in a little bit more revenue at this point last year, but that includes $93,000 that we received for development fees for lift stations. So that explains why that is higher. Our expenses are higher this year, particularly if you kind of go down the line. The biggest difference you'll see is in sewer expense. We had more salary and benefits in that line, in that department this month compared to October of last year by about $20,000. There was also $42,000 in chemicals that have already hit this year's budget compared to last year's budget. That would be a big part of the expense. Additionally, some lab services and some other maintenance and repair equipment. Let me remind you that at this point last year, we did not have a manager over the sewer plant. So I would say now that we have someone in place getting things squared away, that might be contributing to the difference in expenses for that department. Lastly is sanitation, solid waste. Again, kind of the income statement. So one thing, I like the way Jennifer pointed this out, but at the bottom you'll see the GFL invoice is not paid yet because it's paid a month behind. So didn't want that to skew what you're seeing up there by showing that we have $86,000 in revenue. $73,000 of that is the invoice that you see at the bottom. That has been paid in November. Lastly, self-funded insurance. Up at the top, you see how much is sitting in the bank, which is about $800,000. That is our savings since inception of the bank account back in 2017. The orange box tells you how much we contributed in October. That is employer and employee contributions to it. And the blue box tells you how much we've actually paid. Again, we only pay actual claims, and then we pay a third party to handle that. So, so far in October, we have saved $70,000. Any questions?
Does anybody have any questions for Sarah? All right. No questions, Sarah. Let's move on to E. E1, proposed 2022 meeting calendar. Go ahead.
All right. So through some discussions with the mayor, with Tom, with David, came up with this proposed schedule for 2022. So right now we have the work session at 3 p.m. and the meeting at 6 p.m. Doesn't leave much time for the city clerk's office to get the agenda ready for the 6 o'clock meeting. It just kind of causes some chaos there. So what we're proposing here is to have the work session at 10 a.m. and the meeting at 6 p.m. on the same day. That far right column is more for staff, just telling us when we need to have the agenda items ready. Also, we have included in this proposed calendar a council retreat, which we're proposing to be January 20th and 21st. And then also, I think this was Councilmember Montahan's idea, I think, if I'm giving credit to the wrong person, I'm sorry, suggested, well, why don't we go ahead and put some budget dates out there, which that's a great idea. I don't know why we hadn't done that before. So you can see in August, kind of, we looked at this year's calendar, or this past year's calendar for the budget, and modeled it similar to that. So there's a couple budget workshops already tentatively scheduled as well.
Okay, so essentially what we have here is a schedule that anticipates a council meeting on the second Tuesday of every month, except June and except October. June, we're gonna tentatively plan to schedule off because we have GMA that month and there's a lot of staff out for vacation. We've done that for 2 years. We're proposing that again. And then in October, the second Tuesday falls on the week for fall break for the school system. So here we're proposing to bring that up to the first Tuesday in October. All right, council, anybody have any questions or comments? Ms. McPherson.
Okay, so there was a need for a change. We've done this schedule for 1 year with the 3 o'clock and the 6 o'clock. And as you said, we had some problems. It put pressure on them, even trying to get things out. We could never see a final agenda till minutes before. And there was a time where our meetings even ran into one another, you know, when it's an exceptionally long work session. The other difficulty is it can be 5 and 6 hours of meetings this time of day, and some people are already quipping that they're about finished at this point. It is. You get tired and you don't make the best decisions if you decide to rush or you just want to move things along. But whose meetings are these? It's the council's meeting. It's not the city manager's meeting. It's not a department head meeting. It is our meeting. It's the governing body's meetings. And who do we work for? We work for the citizens. So how we do our public meetings that are public for one reason, because we're a public elected officials and we need to have transparent government, the sunshine law, whatever, where people know what we're doing with their money. So my concern is this: I don't think I could ever support a schedule that has the work session on the same day as the voting meeting. And the main reason is this: the reason for having a public meeting is so that people can be informed. The first time we are publicly discussing any of these items, even like tonight, was this afternoon. That's the first time anybody can see what we're saying about these items, and a few hours later we vote on them. In this case, unless they can watch that meeting live or attend live at 10 a.m., I do believe we'll have less people attend at 10 a.m. It's harder for people to be there at that time. But we also, if they cannot watch live and they cannot watch the meeting, the recording, sometime between 12 and 5 o'clock, they cannot be informed about anything we did before we're voting on it. So I just feel like it's a real lack of transparency for the citizens. It's also a disadvantage for us, and some people think it hasn't occurred, but it has occurred, where you needed additional information, you wanted to talk to staff further, and the time is not there between the two meetings. So whatever happens, I would just urge, I don't know what we're going to do this time. I have a feeling I know what we're going to do, but I hope we'll at least think about that and consider at either this point or some point going back to a work session on a Thursday and having the time to follow up on things, meet with staff if you need to, citizens to be informed about what we're talking about and what we're saying about it, both in media and having time to watch the video over a period of more than 3 hours so that they can be informed. And then we would do a voting meeting on Tuesday.
All right, anybody else wish to be recognized? Mr. Young.
I would agree that we work for the citizens, but however, we really don't want to put unnecessary burdens on our staff. They are very busy, and in some cases, we're shorthanded. If a citizen is truly interested, the agenda is out there days in advance, and they can look at it online. And if they have a question, they can refer that to their city council member or to city staff, ask the question. The city staff is often, in our current situation, city staff has often been asked for additional information based on something that came up in the work session, and they get it to us 5 minutes before 6. this would allow city staff, if something comes up, to provide that information in time for us to review it and discuss it before we go to vote. So I think this is a better solution. I don't think that the citizens have less opportunity to find out. If they're interested in what's going on, they have less opportunity to look at the agenda. They have the same opportunity. And a staff has the opportunity to devote 1 day a month to a city council meeting, which just takes a lot of preparation and a lot of effort on their part.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Young. Would anybody else like to be recognized? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the 2022 meeting calendar as presented.
Second.
I have a motion to approve the proposed 2022 calendar as presented and a second from Ms. Marchman. Is there any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? That's 4-1. That will be the calendar. And we will, as we always have, we will reserve the right to add meetings anytime during the year that we need to, if it becomes necessary, or to make changes. Okay, Mr. City Manager, I don't want to say anything ugly. I'm just going to suggest to you to move it expeditiously through your report.
I'm sorry.
I'm just kidding with you.
If I could just have 15 seconds, I do want to mention that because they are our meetings, I would like for us to be included in the future on the discussion of when we're going to plan these times. And there was no discussion. It just appeared that that was the proposal, and I think the council should be included. That's all. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Barber.
All right, I'm going to skip the things that we've talked about and only focus on some of the new stuff. One is that the manhole rehab is underway. We have already repaired at least 3 really significant leaks. One of them we estimated at 20 gallons a minute, so if you want to multiply that out, that's a lot of water. The sewer project on Anderson has begun. We have interviewed several candidates for the HR director without success, and we're going to pull that down. I think we already have, and repost it at the beginning of January. We have had 14 meetings that I noted, some that you know about and attended. One series of those were orientation meetings with Anna McCoy, which have gone on maybe without your notice. I think she's probably met with everybody so far. We've had a workers' comp insurance review. We've been meeting with developers. We've met with the owner of Gabe's and talked about his relocation plans, which he might be interested in. We met with Tanner about helping us with the wellness program, which you've approved. We've been working on the TAD, on and on and on and on and on. We had a really interesting meeting that you all attended with Dan McRae and Jeff Fuquay that we don't need to talk about. Staff has talked to who knows how many people about a package store. So just get ready. If we don't have 20 people apply for that, I'm going to be shocked. Christmas luncheon, I think most everybody attended. We really appreciate that. I feel like we're building some momentum with those lunches, and that they're about as well attended as we could hope for with the police being off shift and that kind of thing. Winter Wonderland train has started, but we had to cancel Saturday because of rains. I think we probably refunded, $3,000 for that one day. We are considering for the first time extending it on the back end and riding between Christmas and New Year's, which we've never done. So I'll keep you abreast of that. The gym is really busy. This is the first year that we've played without the Villerica Elementary gym. So our gym's got pickleball and basketball going on, really busy. A couple of construction sites, still cranking. We've got some residential stuff that's, still just in conceptual, nothing really new there, so.
All right, council,
it.
you have any questions for Tom?
I have a question.
All right.
When do we, should we expect to see a proposed ordinance on the liquor store?
Oh,
I think that we're planning to have a draft ready prior to the January meeting.
yeah, I think so.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Carter.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up the one that Gil didn't remember, but the Lakemore paving is the one I had mentioned to you 2 or 3 times. When are we going to be out there?
I would say that our efforts to get Baldwin back here are an utter failure. We have been after them literally since this March or April. And we got the full depth reclamation crew out here one time, and they did the industrial park. We have not been able to get them back, and we have 2 areas to do, Lakemore and out, Coach's old neighborhood. And we still have not done anything, downtown. So we have this regular milling and top coat still to do. So we're trying to escalate sort of up the food chain in the company to try to
We've
get
had 3 commitments to come out, and each time they didn't
more than that,
come, right?
But we're going to run out of weather again. We're going to
Working
be
on it.
back to the spring.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Do we still need this executive? Okay. And is that on the real estate? All right. All right. So we're going to, in just a moment, we're going to go into executive session. But let me take a moment to recognize Clint Chance, our District 2 Commissioner for Carroll County. I also want to recognize Anna McCoy, who is Councilwoman-elect. She will be sworn in January. Did I miss anybody? I should do this at the beginning, and I always forget. All right. Mr. Macklin, would you present a motion for someone here?
Yes, we need to entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of meeting to discuss or vote to enter into a contract or to purchase, dispose of, or lease real estate subject to the approval in the subsequent public vote is provided in Georgia Code Section 50-14-3B2.
I'll make that motion.
All right. Mr. Carter made that motion. Ms. Marchman seconded it. Will we possibly take action? I need to tell Joel if we know. All right, Joel, just hang out. All right, folks, all in favor? Okay, we are now in executive session. We'll be back.